White initiates with a solid, establishing central control and maintaining equality. Black responds with the Sicilian defense, creating dynamic imbalance and preserving balance. White develops the knight to a flexible move that solidifies central presence. Black mirrors with reinforcing the center and preparing for active piece play. White's is a positional choice, but it slightly concedes initiative and influences the pawn structure negatively. Black fianchettos the bishop with developing harmoniously and maintaining positional equality. White develops the bishop to completing the fianchetto and reinforcing the long diagonal. Black mirrors the fianchetto with activating the bishop and holding the balance. White supports the central pawn and opens lines for the queen and dark-squared bishop. Black supports their central pawn with solidifying the structure and preparing bishop development. White places the bishop at a solid developing move that controls key central squares. Black develops their pawn to strengthening their pawn chain and maintaining equilibrium. White's connects the rooks and prepares for castling, a standard developing maneuver. Black's is an aggressive queen sortie, but it becomes a target and loses tempo. White develops the knight to a slight retreat that aims for flexibility in pawn structures. Black centralizes the knight to an active outpost that pressures White's position. White castles kingside, securing the king and bringing the rook towards the center. Black develops the knight to a reserved move that supports potential kingside action. White moves the king to a prophylactic move to safeguard against potential diagonal threats. Black develops the bishop to reinforcing the pawn structure and preparing for queenside activity. White pushes, aiming to gain space on the kingside and potentially open lines for attack. Black's is a developing move, but it misses an opportunity and concedes positional initiative. White advances the pawn to intensifying kingside pressure and limiting Black's options. Black's is a pawn push, but it creates weaknesses and allows White to gain further space. White pushes, aggressively expanding on the kingside and aiming for a breakthrough. Black's is an active bishop placement, but it can become a target for White's pawn advances. White captures, opening the f-file and creating attacking possibilities. Black recaptures, developing the knight and challenging White's kingside advances. White advances, pushing the knight back and increasing kingside pawn majority. Black exchanges knights via simplifying the position and aiming to reduce White's attacking potential. White recaptures, centralizing the queen and maintaining an active piece presence. Black captures, disrupting White's pawn structure and creating doubled pawns. White recaptures, restoring pawn unity on the queen side and opening the b-file. Black recaptures, centralizing the queen and creating threats along the c-file. White moves the queen to a slightly passive retreat that allows Black to improve their position. Black's is a misplaced queen move, weakening the king's defenses and losing valuable tempo. White's is a severe blunder, opening lines for Black and weakening their own king's safety. Black's is a positional mistake, creating a weak pawn and failing to exploit White's error. White's is a mistake, failing to address the central tension and allowing Black to gain influence. Black's develops actively, pinning a knight and preparing to exploit White's kingside weaknesses. White's repositions the rook, but it doesn't solve their significant positional disadvantages. Black castles kingside, securing the king and connecting their rooks effectively. White's is a slight inaccuracy, failing to adequately defend against Black's threats. Black repositions the rook to increasing pressure on the open file and improving piece coordination. White's is a slight inaccuracy, allowing black to break open the center advantage as Sli. Black captures, opening the e-file and gaining a strong central presence. White recaptures, activating the rook but still facing a difficult position. Black's is a positional mistake, overlooking tactical possibilities and allowing white to equalize. White develops the bishop to a solid move that protects the king and prepares for further action. Black pushes, challenging white's pawn structure and creating dynamic counterplay. White centralizes the queen to attacking the pawn and controlling important central squares. Black develops the bishop to challenging white's queen and reinforcing their central control. White maneuvers the rook to a strong position that supports potential kingside advances. Black centralizes the queen to contesting the center and simplifying the position. White moves the rook to maintaining pressure and controlling key central files. Black advances, seeking to create passed pawns and disrupt white's coordination. White centralizes the queen to defending the bishop and controlling central squares. Black exchanges queens via simplifying to a more manageable endgame. White recaptures, consolidating their pawn structure and preparing for the endgame. Black repositions the rook to activating it on an open file and preparing for endgame play. White moves the king to a prophylactic move to improve king safety in the endgame. Black's is a severe blunder, allowing white to seize a decisive advantage. White's is a severe blunder, missing the opportunity and allowing black back into the game. Black repositions the rook to a solid move that reinforces their defensive structure. White captures, winning a pawn and simplifying into a winning endgame. Black's is a severe blunder, losing significant material and leading to an overwhelming advantage for white. White captures, consolidating their material advantage and maintaining strong attacking pressure. Black's is a mistake, allowing white to exchange pieces and further solidify their winning position. White exchanges pieces with simplifying to a dominant endgame where victory is assured. Black's is a severe blunder, losing more material and accelerating white's inevitable victory. White seizes the open file, completing the material advantage and forcing resignation. Black exchanges rooks via a futile attempt to reduce the overwhelming deficit. White captures, winning the final piece and concluding the game with decisive material superiority.